Shalom uvracha from Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. This evening, with the help of Hashem, we are privileged to study in our second Haftarah series, the Haftarah of Parshat Shlach. Our Haftarah, the prophetic section of reading this week, is taken from the second chapter of the first book of the prophets, the second chapter of the book of Joshua, Sefer Yehoshua, Perek Bet, telling the story, paralleling the story in the Torah section of this week, of Yehoshua sending spies to investigate, to observe the land of Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, to see the land of Canaan, and to come back with some type of report. The stories seem to be quite different. In the tragic story in the book of Bamidbar, in Parashat Hashavua of Shlach, there's a tragic ending seemingly, where the Jewish people are so discouraged, so distant from the Holy Land, some of them even to the level of wanting to go back to the land of Egypt. And thank God, in the story in the Haftarah, it seems to be an upbeat story. They come back, and they're ready very shortly afterwards to enter the Holy Land. Many of the commentaries discuss the question as to why Yehoshua embarks upon such a mission. Why does Yehoshua delegate people to go to Israel when he himself remembers 40 years or so earlier, he was one of the Meragalim. He stood up against those forces that came back with such disparaging comments and insights, so many statements of such a negative nature about the land of Israel. Why would he want to repeat the error of Moshe? Why would he go through the motions again of something that he saw led to tragedy? According to the Torah, one of the reasons why the Jewish people were in the desert for so long has something to do with the sin of the Meragalim. Should one again send spies when the first time it caused such tragedy? Now, there are many approaches, but I'd just like to share one. Some say that Yehoshua was trying to reach the level of the ultimate teshuvah for Am Yisrael. You see, in the laws of repentance, as stated in the Gemara and Masachet Yomah, in Talmudic passages, as well as in the Maimonidean code, in the laws of repentance, Rambam, based on the Gemara, distinguishes between people who are returning to God, who are meritorious in their repentance, but seems to say that there are certain levels, there are gradations of teshuvah. If someone repents at a point where they cannot sin any longer, it's obviously not the same level of repentance as someone who still has the same energy, the same level of temptation. Rambam posits that the ultimate teshuvah, the teshuvah gemurah, is when a person is in a very similar situation to the one that they were in originally, where they did transgress, where they did fail, and on the second occasion, instead of falling, they're able to maintain their level of connection to God and to emerge on a level of purity and spirituality. Can one suggest that perhaps Yehoshua is sending the spies because Yehoshua is interested, as they're about to enter the land of Eretz Yisrael, to do the ultimate tikkun, the ultimate level of teshuvah gemurah? Teshuvah gemurah, well, how will we ever do teshuvah as a nation for the sin of the spies? Maybe we'll set up a similar type of situation. And maybe we'll send them again to Eretz Yisrael, but this time when they come back, with quite a different approach, with quite a different account, maybe that will be the spiritual rectification, the level of tikkun for the very sin that we read about in Parashat Hashavua. If that's correct, then we're not just reading another story in Parashat Shlach, one story of spies, in Sefer Yehoshua, another story, but maybe the story in the Haftarah is a form of tikkun for the story in the Parashat. I would like to focus just on one aspect of the And that is the oath, the commitment that the two spies make to Rahab, the commitment that the two spies make to Rachav, that in the merit of the fact that she saved their lives, she hid them, she covered for them, she camouflaged them, she was able to help them escape the pursuit of the king of Jericho, who was looking for them, the leaders, the local leaders, who had heard that there were some spies, some scouts from the Jewish people who are in the land of Israel. As a result of that, the two representatives of Am Yisrael make some kind of deal with Rachav, as is delineated in the Haftarah, and she asks them to please spare her life. When they come back, she did chesed with them. She wants them to do chesed with her as well. And they do commit to that. In sentence 18 of our Haftarah, in Pasuk Yidchet, they say, well, listen, I want you to somehow, if you will tie the scarlet thread in your window at Tikvat, Chut Hashanis Hazeh Tikshari, and when we come back to Israel, even if there's a destruction of the armies of Jericho and the people of Jericho, in this house where there will be this scarlet thread, there will be no destruction. And Am Yisrael is so careful with carrying out their words of commitment. Now don't forget, Rachav is not on the highest of levels. She's Rachav Hazonah, according to many interpretations, a harlot. According to many interpretations, Rachav is not of the levels where if they perhaps would have defied their commitment, that she wouldn't have had major backing to support her. But when Am Yisrael commits, when Am Yisrael, members of Am Yisrael commit, especially when they swear, then they're able to uphold their word to the nth degree. And therefore, if you read later on in the book of Yoshua, for instance, if you study in chapter 6, where we read the actual story of the conquest of Jericho, so Yehoshua tells the two spies, make sure you fulfill that which you told Rachav, because you can't go against your word. And indeed, I'm reading from chapter 6, verse 23. ויבואו הנערים המרגלים ויוציאו את רחב ואת אביה ואת אמה ואת אחיה ואת כל אשר לה ואת כל משפחותיה הוציאו. את כל משפחותיה הוציאו. Her families, all of her families, they saved. So the rabbi said, what are families? She had many families. Did they commit to saving the families? There's a comment in the Talmud Yerushalmi in Perek Dalet Halacha Dalet Brachot. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, "Afilu hayta b'mishpachta 200 anashim." Even if there were 200 members of her family, v'halachu v'davku b'matayim mishpachot, and each one went and joined another family, branches and branches of family, hundreds and hundreds of branches. Et kol mishpachotah, all of her families were saved in the merit of her kindness. Kulam nitzolu b'schuta, all of them that were saved in the merit of Rachav. And I'm always fascinated by the great wisdom of the rabbis, who sometimes in studying Tanakh find references of connection to chapters of study that we would never put together. Today we study Tanakh with very careful scrutiny based on computer programs where there are word analyses and sentences that are contrasted with each other. But just listen to this very beautiful comment of the rabbis on the sentence in the Song of Songs, in Shir HaShirim. In Shir HaShirim, as you know, is a story of the great praises, the great love, the great longing between this man who's deeply in love with this woman and this woman who's deeply in love with this man. And he is praising her and she's praising him, and he's pursuing her and she's pursuing him. And the rabbis understand this not only to mean the deep connection and the deep holiness of the connection between a husband and wife, between a bride and a groom, between a groom and a bride. But they understand this metaphorically to mean as well the connection between God and the Jewish people. So that many of the praises in Shir HaShirim, many of the praises in the Song of Songs, speaking about this wonderful, beautiful woman, is not only a reference, according to our sources, to the beauty and to the greatness of this woman, but is also an indication of, on some level, of the greatness of Am Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, very often when we're speaking about how wonderful this man is, how wonderful the groom is, how wonderful is her beloved, it's not just a reference to the man in the story, but it's a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So listen to chapter 4, verse 3, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Gimel of Shir HaShirim. And it's so beautiful, the way they brought two sentences which seemingly have nothing to do with each other. The great minds of the Midrashic rabbis. Kichut, listen carefully to the words. Kichut hashani siftotayich umidbarech naveh. The man is praising the woman that he loves so much. He's talking about how beautiful her siftotayich, how beautiful her lips. Her lips are as red, her lips are the color of scarlet, like the chut hashani, like the color of a thread, of a scarlet-colored thread. Umidbarech naveh, and your speech is so beautiful. Your lips are so beautiful. Your speech is so beautiful. So many women try their best to have their lips in a certain color, connected to red, connected to scarlet. Maybe he's praising her natural beauty here. Your lips are chut hashani siftotai. Rashi, in his comment to Shir HaShirim, associates, I assume based on earlier sources, although I did not find the earlier source. I'm sure it must be in some midrash. I have a book here on the shelf called Mikorot Rashi, a whole series of books here on the sources that Rashi used for his comment. He didn't have any note on this one, so I'm not sure. Kichut hashani. Thank you. I'll just bring one. I'll show them what this looks like. Any. Kichut ken so ken. Mikorot Rashi. It's a wonderful sefer. Mikorot Rashi on the entire Tanakh he wrote. And I looked for his note on this sentence. I didn't find him saying where this teaching comes from. I assume it's from a midrash.
What's the tava?
Kichut hashani siftotayich, says Rashi, when the Jewish people speak with their lips, that which they say they keep. They are very, very serious about adhering to their word. But Rashi says, where is a great example of that? In the Chut Hashani story. The Chut Hashani Siftotayich in Shir HaShirim is connected to the Etikvat. Chut Hashani, Tikshari, the Chut Hashani, the scarlet thread in the story of the spies is somehow connected to the greatness of the Siftotayich, to the greatness of the speech of the lips of the Jewish people. Rashi says, they're so careful l'havtiach v'lishmor haftachatam, and to keep their word. Kemo she'asu hameragalim l'rachav hazonah she'amru la et tikvat chut hashani v'shameru haftachatam. In the middle of a war, who has time to think about promises? They're fighting a battle with Jericho. So they promised, they didn't promise. They made a commitment, they didn't make a commitment. No. Am Yisrael has such beautiful lips. Am Yisrael has siftotayich. Your lips are so beautiful. Your lips are kichut hashani. The chut hashani of Rachav's window. The chut hashani of the beautiful, shiny lips of Am Yisrael. Umidbarech naveh. And she brings in many families to be saved. That wasn't their commitment. Their commitment wasn't to save many families. Maybe she was to be saved. Her father, her mother, or maybe her brothers or sisters. Mishbechoteha! Can we suggest? I didn't see this in the commentaries, so I'm not sure. But can we say that there's a difference between siftotayich and sfatayich? What's the difference between sfatayich and siftotayich? There is a concept of Hashem sifatay tiftach, not siftotai. What's the difference between sfatai and siftotai? What's the difference between sfatayich and siftotayich? They both seemingly mean your lips. But maybe, like the difference between libbecha and levavecha, maybe your total heart. Maybe one is your heart, one is your total. Siftotayich, maybe their lips are so all-encompassing. You have such a beautiful commitment to keeping your word on Yisrael, that you even go beyond what you promised. And maybe a beautiful example of this is the way they keep their word. To even Rachav HaZonah. Maybe each of us, as we're all students of the Meragalim, of Yehoshua, as we're students of Yehoshua, as we're students of the story of our great Haftarah, maybe if we make commitments, we should try our best to keep it. And even if the people that we're committing to are not necessarily on the highest level of society, and maybe even if we're in the middle of certain kinds of battles, God forbid, may there never be any need for any kind of battle, and maybe even if we're in the middle of great tension, we always have to remember that which we promised, because Am Yisrael is a Chut Hashani nation. It's a nation that remembers any time they promise to do anything with that scarlet thread. Umidbarech Naveh. As the great prophet Tzefaniah writes in the 3rd chapter of the book of Tzefaniah, I'm reading from Perek Gimel, Pasuk Yud Gimel, She'erit Yisrael lo ya'asu avla, v'lo yidabberu chazav, v'lo yimatzei b'fihem l'shon tarmit. The remnant of Israel will not commit any form of corruption. They will not speak falsehood. And a deceitful tongue will never be found in their mouths. Because kechut hashani siftotayich umidbarech naveh. Thank you so much for listening. Shalom.